Hi, it's Liz. I'm back again this week. It is Bright Thursday. Um, so for all my all for whatever Orthodox followers I have, Christ is risen. I am kind of out of energy though this bright week already, and that kind of brings us right into the topic of this video. So, um, the first part of this, I was talking about sort of my past with like learning about Aspergers and autism and um, why I self-diagnosed and how that allowed me to um, really minimize all of those symptoms for a really long time, to the point that it wasn't really something that I thought about much anymore at all. And the reason that that's changed is because of becoming a parent. So I spent quite a few years, um, I've known since I was a kid that I felt the calling to be a mother. And so for quite a few years, I had been trying to prepare myself as best I could to handle that, knowing what my own weaknesses and struggles are, and trying to get together as many tools as I could, try to get as many good habits in place as I could, try to improve in areas where I'm weak. And so, like, for instance, after I went to university and got a bachelor's, and then I was really burnt out after that. So what I decided to do was work on being a housewife, because I knew I'd have the opportunity to raise my child at home, and I just wanted to get good at, or as good as I could at, taking care of the house without a child, and try to just learn how to do that and work on my executive function skills, because that's really key. When you work at home as a homemaker, you make your own schedule, you have to make your own priorities, you have to figure out yourself what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, what order you're going to do it, how often you're going to do it. Those are the kinds of things that get decided for you in a workplace. And that is much easier for me because that kind of thinking is really hard for me. It's some of the harder. That's what was difficult about being in school, about being in college. It wasn't the material so much. There were some times when the material was challenging, but honestly, it wasn't usually challenging enough for me. Um, the issues were more having to do with managing my time and, like, trying to keep track of, feeding myself, especially, I'm on a restricted diet. So that adds another layer of planning that I have to do before I even go to school. And then, spending a long time in areas where where it's not my home, where I don't have a lot of privacy. I have to do a lot of socializing, just being there. I have to keep track of projects and deadlines and homework, and all that stuff that really burnt me out by the time I was done. But at least you do have people who are basically telling you what you need to do for the most part. And, having to do things on a self-directed level is is an extra step of difficulty for me. Unless, and this is really a really typical kind of autistic thing, like, and it comes across to people like we just are lazy, or like we only want to do things that we really like. And that's kind of, I mean, that's not an inaccurate way to put it exactly, but it's kind of like it's truly difficult for us often to devote our mental energy to things that we're not really excited about. It's very, very difficult to pay attention. It's just hard to do on a neurological level. So it's not just a matter of, choosing not to because we don't want to. It's like it's genuinely quite a bit harder than it is for other people for us to like do that. So I if somebody's teaching me about something I don't really care about, I mean, that I can struggle through that. But if I have to learn on my own about something I don't care about, I've just learned the hard way that that's probably not a good use of my time. I mean, if it's really something that's necessary for me to survive, then that's motivation. That adds some motivation. But if it's not, it's genuinely very challenging. So, and most things aren't. So, like, I devoted a lot of time to my project, my capstone. It's like 90 pages long. And I think it's so cool. It's about how to make a bunch of a specific kind of fractal from patterns in Pascal's triangle, and some of the properties of those fractals, this whole like infinite family of fractals that you can make. They're very cool. But anyway, what's my point? So yeah, it's, so I spent a few years being a homemaker, and there are things I like about it. And I definitely prefer to be a homemaker and take care of a child than I think I would to work and then have to come home and take care of a child. I think that would be a lot harder for me. But it's really challenging. And so before Lydia was born, it was still challenging, and I wasn't great at it. But I definitely made some headway. I definitely like learned some things. And so I was prepared for that when Lydia came along, that I wouldn't be able to maintain all the progress I'd made. I knew that was going to happen. And I figured, I'll bounce back. And I am bouncing back, slowly but surely, although I've certainly had to be less ambitious about certain things like my garden. But what I didn't expect was the extent to which just more than executive function, that like all of my autistic symptoms, include ones that I had trouble with in high school and ones that I didn't even ever realize I had, or I didn't think of myself as having, have just shown up. And I think this is because, having a child, taking care of a young child, really puts strain on all of the areas that an autistic brain struggles already. And so I just don't think I'd experienced the specific kinds of stress like that, because I'd become so good at avoiding them until now, and suddenly it's caused a lot of problems for me. So, the sources of stress that I see specifically with raising a small child, and these are sources of stress for all parents, but the ones that are specifically difficult for autistic parents, well, for one, there's the sensory stuff. The noise is kind of an obvious part of it. Little kids make a lot of noise, and they don't necessarily respond to you saying to be quiet or whatever. And one of the things that's been really hard for me with Lydia, and one of the things that has been triggering has been really getting me to the point of overload more than the noise, though, is tactile stuff that she is constantly, and not just the hurting. I mean, she bites sometimes and she grabs and she does stuff that hurts, and that hurts, but I'm not even talking about that, just the constant touching. She's constantly like climbing all over me and then wanting to touch parts of my body that are sensitive, specifically like my face and my breasts and my belly. Um, just really anywhere. It doesn't even matter at a certain point, because when I'm getting more and more overloaded with tactile sensation, touch in any part of my body starts to just set me off, where it gets to the point that I am nearing a meltdown, that I'm getting really upset. And I'd even describe it as like anger, a panic, even. And I, I certainly have gotten to that point from other things in the past, like people touching me at a point where I'm already overwhelmed, like somebody touching me, like in a crowded space that's loud, and then somebody touches me and I don't expect it, and it makes me really upset. I mean, that could happen to a lot of people. So I didn't really think much of it. I didn't really think of it as an autistic thing, but I've just gotten to the point that, I mean, just last night, in the middle of the night, she woke up and I was tending to her, and she kept touching me, and it just very, I was already, it's already been kind of a tough couple days in terms of being overstimulated, and it's easy to get to the point where I don't even realize it's that bad until I get set off. It's really like reaching the edge, and suddenly I I'm like, I had to just leave. I had to like just leave her for a while because I could not stand to be touched anymore. It was too much. Um, so there's the sensory stuff. um, there is, and any kind of sensory stuff sets off other sensory stuff. I mean, just being overwhelmed and being exhausted, lacking sleep, not eating enough because your life is disordered, all of that for an autistic person will lead to more more of this kind of these sensory processing issues. So I've also been having like, my light sensitivity has gone through the roof. I mean, it ebbs and flows, but I've frequently in the past few months, especially since Lydia has become a toddler and not just a baby, um, gotten to the point where I had to wear sunglasses inside, and um, I was just really, really experiencing a lot of light sensitivity, which, um, yeah, I just haven't experienced that in so long. So there's that. Another way it's overwhelming, as I, alluded to before, is the executive function stuff. There's just so much more to keep track of all the time. Um, and of course, again, the more exhausted you are and overwhelmed you are, the harder the executive function is to like function. So um, it just, yeah, it quickly gets to the point that like I even kind of will know at a certain point that I'm doing things in a way that doesn't make sense. I'm quite sure it doesn't make sense, but I simply just don't have the energy to come up with something better. Or I figure just doing something is better than sputtering around trying to figure out the best way to do it, because I don't have the cognitive ability right now, and it's not the best use of the little energy I do have. Um, And of course, as I alluded to, also, there's just all the basic self care. It's a lot harder for parents to do self care. Everybody, I hope everybody knows this. Um, I mean, for non-parents, you might just be really surprised how difficult it can become to do simple things, just to cook for